I met a girl in a community college class when I was 20. We came from very different backgrounds. I was middle class trying to find a cheaper way to go to college, and she was living in almost poverty, going to school because she was forced to by her parents who were threatening to kick her out. She dropped out about a year into her schooling while I continued and finished. During her first year, we formed a relationship, and she moved into my apartment more or less. Her relationship with her parents is pretty much non-existent, and she has little to no outside friends besides one or two women she knew from high school. I make around $80K a year, so we live relatively comfortably, but there's still some strain on finances. I can't say exactly when I started losing feelings, but the fact that she refuses to work, will not cook, wants to eat out every day, does not want to go to school, and continuously wants to buy and spend money on clothes and other stuff, just slowly started grating on me more and more. I work in a female-dominated workplace, and having conversations and interacting with coworkers who have so much going for them, have fun hobbies and aspirations makes it all the worse when your girlfriend is chronically online and spends 7 hours a day scrolling through Instagram or TikTok reels and thinks having intimacy is all she needs to do on her end. Our relationship isn't bad. We have fights every now and then, like an average couple, and have an active intimacy life, but that's pretty much it. From her perspective, if I broke up with her, it would be out of nowhere. But I'm pretty much done and know I could move on quickly and have nothing to be regretful about, as shitty as it sounds. The problem comes in her having no job, no finances, almost no friends, and no family support unit. I'm not a monster. I don't want to make someone virtually homeless, but I don't want to be stuck with someone who has nothing going for them either. I don't know what to do. Now for the update. For starters, I want to thank everyone for all the advice I was given on the last thread, as it helped me formulate how I would go about doing this. When I made that post, I was having an extremely bad day and didn't expect it to blow up like it did, so I don't think I was able to give her a fair defense. Also, I got dozens of messages, ranging from asking me to hand out her contact info so they could take her in as a live-in intimacy girlfriend, to helpful advice telling me to start hiding anything valuable. When I had said that she had come from poverty, her father is a laborer, while her mother also lives a similar lifestyle to how she lives now. Their home is maybe 1,100 square feet and in a terrible place in town, and given her father's past ultimatum, I don't think he will take her back, as she hasn't been back home in years. Yes, I have talked to her about this since January maybe 3 times. Either by gently telling her it would be nice if she went out more to find a hobby at the very least, to flat out saying she was wasting away on her phone and that she needs to get a job or go back to school. Each time she either changed the subject, made it a joke, or followed through for a couple of days before going back to her usual self. She is a kind partner who asks me about my day, always tries to make me laugh or lighten the mood when I get annoyed, and generally shows a lot of affection, which makes me feel terrible when none of that works anymore, and I just see her as another person. Now for the confrontation. Last night, when we were both getting ready for bed, I didn't take my clothes off, and instead just stood there telling her we needed to talk. At first, she was just smiling and jumping up and down on the bed with her knees, thinking I wasn't as serious as I was, but eventually, she was able to read the mood. I told her something wasn't feeling right anymore, that I've tried to make this work and be patient with her for the past few years, but I didn't know how much more time I was willing to spend waiting for her to get a job, go back to school, or just get a hobby, if anything. I told her that it annoyed and grated on me that she just didn't seem to care about herself, and that I hated she had no goals or aspirations. This was probably the first time in a long time she was as attentive as she's ever been during this conversation, and agreed to whatever I was saying, even also giving suggestions on where she can apply, what courses were starting to interest her, and even said I could look over her as she submitted applications online to make sure she wasn't lying. In her head, it seemed like I was still willing to make this work, and a part of me believed this would finally be the moment that she would change. so it made the next part even harder for me and for her. At first, I told her I didn't love her the same way, which slowly but eventually led to me saying I didn't feel anything at all about this relationship and was jaded. I was tired and wanted a fresh start with someone who was more goal-oriented and wanted something more out of life. When she realized what I was getting at, she started to cry and asked why I didn't mention this sooner. And I said, I've always asked her to cook, to go out with me to try something out, or to just go back to school, even when I offered to pay for her classes. Anything. She said she understands that part, but was upset why I didn't say it was leading to me losing interest in her, because from her perspective, it seemed as if I still loved her all the same. She started apologizing, saying she wasn't in the right mental state, and saying nothing was motivating her, and she genuinely had no interest in any hobbies. The only thing she liked was spending time with me, which is all she looked forward to in the day when I came home. None of this was really affecting my emotions besides making me feel uncomfortable, so I tried to continue by saying, I think her lifestyle would be better with another person. But she immediately cut me off and became more panicked. She started to apologize again for what she's done and said she would be a better girlfriend, that she would go with me tomorrow to wherever I wanted to go and would look for courses in August that she could start doing. But she did not want to lose me since she had nothing else in life and absolutely hated that I stopped loving her. There were so many tears and snot that I said we would have this conversation again when she calmed down, and we eventually did in an hour or so. She pleaded to give her 2 months to make a change and give her another chance, and promised that she would change. Again, she listed off all the places she would apply to and said she would be a better partner. I never wanted to make her homeless, so this seemed like a good settlement, even though I still had my doubts. I then reaffirmed that I wanted to see other people, but she seemed much more adamant on this issue than the aspirations issue that she would be able to fix this. She said just give her a month to try and make the relationship work, and asked me again and again on what she could do to make her love her again, and that she didn't want me to hate her. She said that this was the worst part of it all, and the only person that she had just being done. It seemed as if she was about to break down again. So I said, okay, we'll see how this relationship is in a month. In my mind, if I'm allowing her 2 months to get back on her feet, then by a month, she would already be ready to move on. I also didn't want her to suffer a complete mental breakdown while I was still living here. So giving her a month to let her fix the relationship would give her enough time to accept things. I slept on the couch last night and will probably continue doing so for a while. She came out at about 3 a.m. wanting to talk some more, but I said I was exhausted and we would do it tomorrow. She then slept on the floor beside me for the rest of the night, apologizing again. When I told her to stop, she silently said okay and sobbed for a bit under her blanket. But that's everything that's happened so far. This was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I regret nothing and feel much better letting everything out. I don't know how this situation will be in 2 months, but I was firm that it was the deadline. This post will probably get buried, so I probably won't do another update since I don't think anyone will care about this in a week or a month. But I will definitely private message those of you who have been helping me through this on how it turns out, or those who just want to be updated. But yeah, thanks. Now for the next day update. I feel like this will be an easier place to post since it's my page and I don't have to worry about over-spamming with small or inconsequential updates anywhere else, as it's only for those wanting to read. I want everyone who has private messaged me to know I read them all, especially those of you who have gone through similar circumstances as me and have shared your stories. I've been doing some self-reflecting and think I know how I want to go about this that will help with my lack of communication skills. I know I'm not a perfect person, but I still stand by my decisions I made that night 100% through and through. I might post an update sooner in a week or so, as the day after our fight, I'm filled with a bit more hope than usual. Don't know how long it will last, but better make use of it. But again, just wanted to post this for everyone sharing your stories with me privately, as I can't message you all, as it's been helping me make decisions on what to do about this all immensely. Now for the 1 week update. Hey all, it's been about a week since my last post, and thought I'd give an update. A lot has happened, including the explosion of my first update thread. I have over 50 plus DMs asking me for an update, so instead of copy and pasting replies, I'll do another one. I find it easier to write than to speak in many situations, so this has been a great way to help my decisions and clear my head. Writing everything down has helped tremendously, and I will continue to do so until this is all over, and I will nuke everything afterwards. After the night confrontation, we didn't really speak all too much at home, with it being dry and awkward for a day or two, but I have been told I'm a workaholic by nature, so it was easy for me to stay at the hospital as a distraction. But in that time, she did start to cook again. We weren't in the mood to go out to eat together. Eventually, though, I sat down with her after she asked for a more thorough conversation on why I felt our relationship was failing. She promised not to cry or get upset, but wanted me to be 100% upfront, so she had a better way of understanding, stating she wanted to try everything to fix this. I was really apprehensive about this, and I can't really explain why, but given being together for 4 years, I wanted to at least make an effort myself out of respect, even though a large part of me was angry for even doing so, as I feel I've never had the same from her. There have been many different camps in my last update, the main ones being kick her out immediately and leave her before it gets worse, try to find a way to fix our relationship or end the relationship altogether, but continue living with someone who would probably become absolutely neurotic. If I was going to let her stay for 2 months, I would absolutely not be dealing with that. I took consideration in all these main advice discussions and read through almost every reply, even the most assumptive, bizarre, and downright unhinged Redditor takes. More importantly, I took heavy influence from those who have shared with me their past stories, which either led to them being stuck in loveless relationships for years or eventually being able to overcome their problems and have an even stronger connection. Thank you again for your private messages. I read through a lot of your lives. Now for our conversation. She said she saw something on TikTok where couples put a phone on a table with a timer and wanted to do something similar for each person to air what made them upset. I said that was dumb. If we were going to talk about our problems, it would be better if there was no time limit. She eventually agreed and said I could go first, asking me first, when was the time that I completely lost my love in her? As I said before, it was never one action, but a grating feeling that got worse and worse until it got to this point, and I told her that. So she then asked when was the time I felt the most angry. I said it would take some time to think for me, and she said that was fine. After a few minutes, something came to mind. I couldn't formulate the right words at first, but it eventually just started to come out. I told her the worst time was when I was first starting at my hospital. To keep it short, the tempo was brutal. It was constant work with little to no downtime, as I was constantly learning new things that school would have never taught me. While being expected to be able to handle it as a professional, it was without a doubt the most stressed I've ever been, and I feel like other RNs can relate here. That year hardened the way I think now. That hard work does pay off if you have the drive and the passion. I told her I think that was when I started losing feelings the fastest, seeing her at home doing absolutely nothing, coming home to no food made, to her not working a job, to her not learning anything, completely stuck to the internet with nothing to show for it. I said it made me even more upset when I had given suggestions for jobs with pretty easy schedules, or to find a new interest in school that would pan out better than last time, only to be rejected at my every attempt. I told her flat out that it disgusted me. She asked me why I didn't make this a bigger issue at the time, that I should have communicated this to her. But I said there are some things that shouldn't have to be said. I shouldn't have to remind her to wash her butt, eat, do something other than mindlessly scrolling on her phone for hours a day, every day. I also told her that after coming home from the hospital during more stressful days, the last thing I wanted was to spend my time begging my girlfriend to do something productive, so I held my tongue and settled as she was still nice and caring. I had no other reasons to end it, and so the resentment grew worse from then on. It was around here that I became more mean to my regret now, but I will still input it, as I have everything else. I told her that when she dropped nursing, I was upset since I felt that she was more than capable of doing what I had done. But after spending more time in the relationship and spending more time getting to know her, I knew that with the type of person she was, there was no way she could have ever finished. Which is why I suggested easier and more laid-back jobs, less demanding majors for school. Even if she just cooked or found an interesting hobby, at that point, I would have appreciated it. Still, she chose to do nothing for years. It's just the type of person she was, and why I felt done for her romantically over time. She asked me if I hated her, and I said I didn't know. I told her she was very loving and kind, but I hated how she handled her life to this point. That I felt no ill will towards her after airing everything out. But I also felt nothing else. I just felt done and ready to move on. Throughout this conversation, we kept eye contact, and there were times it seems like she would break. But like she said, she remained as calm as she could while I said what I had to say. I told her I was done and she could say her piece now, but she asked if we could continue the conversation later and locked herself in our room for the rest of the day. The next day we sat down again and finished the conversation. She told me that she thinks she's depressed, saying that she didn't feel sad before that night, just had no motivation of doing anything. I had a couple of messages telling me to ask her to get tested for ADHD, but when I started bringing it up, she was very adamant that is not something she felt comfortable with. I knew she didn't like needles or going to the hospital in general, but her flat-out refusing to get tested for disorders, when I told her it was not at all like a regular hospital visit, surprised me. She asked me if she was able to change in her behaviors. Would I give her another chance? I said I didn't know, as I felt nothing right now, and didn't know if her doing it would bring any feeling back, especially since it took my breaking point to do so. She asked if there was any compromise, and I told her again, if in a month I felt like there was enough reason to stay together, I would, but that there was no guarantee that my feelings would return. But I would match any effort she also put out. She was frustrated by my answer, but I said that's how it would be. She gave me a piece of paper to look at that she was working on last night that had a list of hobbies and interests she wanted to look into, the two major ones being photography and cooking again. She told me that she was looking into these while also showing me her phone, giving proof that she was putting in applications on Indeed and Glassdoor for some entry-level positions that she might get hired in. I told her if she was able to show enough passion or interest in these hobbies that she showed, I would not care about her working, just anything to improve herself. But if she didn't do anything at all, then it would be best to look for a new job to help her if she moves out. I've also been asked in private messages if I have any personal friends to talk to. There's 2 female coworkers I confide some information in, given how many hours we work together at our hospital, and who I completely trust, as in my opinion, they are extremely grounded. They both said I would eventually get love-bombed, and this would all go back to how it once was, and that I needed to stand firm with moving on. They've very helpful friends who have even offered to let me stay over for a few nights, giving the reason that I would fall for her manipulation if I continued being anywhere near her in their own words. But it didn't feel right since I'm still technically in a relationship, but I said I would consider it if the situation worsened. But again, I find them grounded, so I always try to take their advice to heart. Despite numerous messages from you all, privately or openly, telling me that this will be a mistake, I want to make the attempt to give this one last try. Though I feel heavily closed and guarded and still feel indifferent with our current situation. But a lot of you have told me this can eventually change with enough work from both parties. I have also taken the advice of those saying to cut off intimacy, which was my intention from the start anyway, by continuing to sleep in the living room. But each day she's been sleeping on the floor right below me, even when I tell her I'd rather be alone with my thoughts, telling me this is something she would not accept. But that's everything so far. Next update will probably be at the month mark, as there's nothing else I feel like I need to say for now. Just waiting to see if things can get better now that we're working on this somewhat. Now for the 2-week update. Hello. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks. It's actually felt more like a month with how much has gone down. To those I have DM'd with on Reddit about my situation, sorry I have not been replying. At some point a week ago, my messages blew up again with another 100 plus. So I took a break and haven't logged in for a while I work on my situation. I won't be posting in subreddits anymore relating to my problems, and will instead chronicle everything that comes to mind here on my page, as I feel more comfortable just updating those who worry for me at this point. And my girlfriend was very proactive last week. It was a manic influx of energy, as she tried to get interested in many different things that she thought she could enjoy. I kept my promise in meeting her halfway and tried my best at helping her in whatever way I could. The only real interest that she's been mainly sticking with is photography. I've said before that she has a stockpile of clothes that she's had over the years, and she sold a few of them on Depop in order to get enough money to get a Canon 250D camera that she says is good for starting out. She's looked a lot more into this than me. I strongly assume she stuck with this hobby as it gave her a chance to spend more time with me, as she continued asking me to go out into the city to take pictures and test out her camera. Given that I had promised to match her energy and didn't want to be a hypocrite, I did so even when I came home from longer shifts at the hospital. There was a major change in her behavior, however. While she usually was a very loving and affectionate partner, it had been turned up to its max during the first week. She asked me maybe 8 times a day how I was doing, if I was upset, what I wanted to do for the rest of the day, etc., just trying to gauge my mood. When we went out, her PDA was also maxed. She wanted to kiss, hold hands, and spend the night out as long as possible, even when I said I had to go in early to work the next day. It's hard to describe in words what she was doing. I don't know if it was exactly love bombing, but with the energy she was putting out, I was fully expecting a crash to come, and it did during the second week. I've been holding back posting this for a while, as whenever I begin to write, I cannot continue without having to stop. But now that over a month has passed, I think now is the best time to reflect. There might be parts in this post that don't make too much sense chronologically, but given that I've been writing and taking breaks over multiple attempts, some past tense might be off as to where I began and left off. When I said the crash of emotions would come, I was right. It was ugly, loud, and could have been easily prevented in parts. When I posted my last update, I was not in the right mental state, so reflecting on the week before and writing helped to calm my nerves. I'm also a bit embarrassed to admit that I started to smoke a bit again, but it also helped tremendously in my mental state, which was getting close to crashing as of recent, and without the help of my friends, I didn't have much else to turn to. This breakdown was something I could not tell them since I didn't want them stepping in. There had been a point where my girlfriend was in a not-so-well mood during one of our outings to the city. After returning home, she had said I was being dismissive, and if I felt angry or upset with her. Trying to be better with communicating, I said that I was getting uncomfortable with her constant need for affirmation and affection, as it was continually constant. Given that she was still sleeping in the living room at night, I was getting no time alone to myself at all while at home. And after so many outings, I was starting to get physically and emotionally drained. Truthfully, I felt physically tired more than anything. And given what my coworkers and my girlfriend say, it tends to show on my face worse than it is. My girlfriend seemed to take this heavily and didn't attempt to talk with me for the remainder of the day, along with the next, but was in a much more brooding mood during the second. Maybe it would have been better to apologize or communicate better during that point, as it might have been the point that a lot of this could have been avoided if I said something, but I instead took the time to nap and spend time alone, which I had rarely the chance to for over a week. Then came the third day. A lot happened over the course of this day, and a lot was said, and this was where the breaking point occurred, which caused further problems throughout the following week. I will try to be as thorough as I can, remembering everything that happened from the start of the day to the end. When I had woken up, I had left without saying goodbye or speaking to my girlfriend as I was almost running late. Normally, I at least check on her to see what she's doing before I leave. She had been sleeping in our room for the last few days since her mood dropped. My mood was higher than usual during work, as I was rested, had my alone time, and was just genuinely having a nice time at the hospital, which didn't happen too often. There were a few times when my coworkers would go out to eat after work, and for the past few weeks, I had been declining. But on this given day, I had joined them, which led to me arriving home around 9 or later. It was pretty late, and I had a few drinks. This is where I begin to have trouble writing, and where I usually stop. Arriving home, I see my girlfriend sitting down in the living room, looking at me directly as I walked in, not saying a word. It startled me, and I asked what she had been doing, as she wasn't on her phone, nor was she watching TV, just sitting as if she was staring at a wall before I had entered. She asked me where I had been, and I said I was out with friends. She immediately asked if they were my friends from work. My girlfriend is aware that I work alongside mostly women, and I have brought up my friends in the past before our relationship broke down to this point. I said yes, I was with them and we had gone out to eat. She asked me if I had been drinking as well. I don't know if it was noticeable or not, or just a random question, but I said that I had. There was a period of uncomfortable silence that felt a lot longer in memory. She eventually brought up my month deadline on whether my feelings would change, and she asked if they have. It took me a minute to reply, as that question had taken me off guard, and I said I appreciated her efforts in what she was doing, but I was still unsure of our future together and couldn't give her a direct answer. She told me again that during our outings together, I was being dismissive, and that she felt I wasn't putting in the same effort to make this relationship work. I asked what she meant, as I was going out with her whenever she asked, and matching her effort in finding hobbies whenever she thought of something she enjoyed. To me, it just seemed like something she was just saying out of neediness. I think it was at this point she started to lose her composure, as her voice couldn't remain constant. She told me if I was aware that I wasn't smiling when we were outside, that I was quiet and rarely talked when we were spending time together. I told her she already knew how I felt, so for some of it, my mixed feelings shouldn't come as a surprise. I explained again that my lack of talking was just from being tired from work, but I don't think she believed me. She told me she's constantly overthinking how I feel now that she knows I've lost feelings and doesn't know what she can do to make them come back. I told her again to just find a passion for something, anything, to get out of bed and be active with anything in her life. She says it's been 2 weeks and she's been as active as she can possibly be, to the point that it was causing her mental stress, but my mood wasn't improving, and she's wondering if anything will actually change now that it's closer to a month. And then came the full breakdown. Through tears and a broken voice, she tells me how much she loves me, how much affection and love she has given me throughout this relationship, just for me to throw it away over something as stupid as my conditions, as if it was just an excuse to end things, if I ever really loved her at all while we were together. She goes on to say that even with how upset she is at me and how hurt and betrayed she has felt by the one person she has, that she still loves me and wants to continue our relationship. She tells me there will be nothing for her if I leave. No one, no place, no future. Her will to live will be gone, and she won't know what to do with herself. Now, there's a lot I could have said during this, but I don't think I can accurately convey just how hard she was breaking down emotionally during this exchange. There were points where she was almost screaming, completely bawling, and it all just made me freeze, as this was the first time I've ever witnessed her fall apart at this level. She goes on again to say there's no reason to live if this is the end. It won't matter what job she gets. Another month will not be enough, and she knows I still won't want to be with her, and that she will have nothing. After everything was said, she locked herself again in our room and stayed there for a few more days. Whenever I tried to knock to initiate conversation, she screamed for me to go away, and I did. A few days later, she had finally calmed down enough to where we could speak to each other, and she changed her attitude 180. She was still upset but extremely apologetic in what she did and said, telling me that a lot of it was just in the moment and she didn't mean it. The days that I was finally able to spend alone, without her or my friends, gave me the mental strength to finally do what I should have a month ago. I told her as gently and as calmly as I could that it was over, that there was no chance that we could be together at this point, and I no longer wanted to be in a relationship. I told her I would let her stay for an additional 2 months until she could find a job and help her get on her feet. I also said that if she was unable to do anything by that time, then I would be gone and moved out. She started to cry again, but in a much more defeated manner that almost made me break myself. But she agreed to the terms, and it was finally done. She was able to get a job at a supermarket about a week afterward, but only part-time at first, as that was all they were offering. After our final confrontation, our speaking terms were more or less dead. Whenever she was off work, she would be in her room alone for the remainder of the day and night. I had stayed on the couch, as at this point I was pretty much used to it and didn't really mind it. It feels really wrong and selfish to say, but I felt extremely free and happy for a bit. I didn't inform my coworkers about my breakup when it happened and just continued to vaguely say that we were working on it. But during that time, I frequently started going out a lot more with them after work, as staying in our apartment felt more like a chore and depressing. I had hit a high that I had not felt in a long while, and then everything came crashing on me the following week. I had contracted pneumonia and was off work for about 2 weeks to recover. At first, I thought I had caught a cold, but one day it hit like a brick, and my lungs felt at 50% capacity. I couldn't take a deep breath without going into a fit of coughing, and I constantly felt fatigued. Even now, as I write this, with most of my symptoms gone, I still have to use an inhaler to help myself breathe at times. For most of the days that I had been sick, I was sleeping, most days between 12 to 14 hours, and the time that I was awake, I was lying down. When I told her what I had contracted and she saw how sick I was, she offered to let me have the bedroom again, but I refused and said that I was fine. Since she was working part-time, there was still a lot of time that she was spending at home, and for the first few days, she left me alone. But towards the middle of the first week, I was sick. She started to occasionally check on me to see if I was okay and if I wanted anything to eat. Honestly, I hated that me being sick forced us to interact, not because I was mad or anything, but because it felt incredibly weird and awkward, and that I had to depend on her now for a few things, not even a week after we had broken up. I didn't feel well enough to get groceries like I normally did, and since she already worked at a supermarket, she insisted that she buy food instead. And when I gave her my card, she refused it and said she would buy it herself. For the most part, I was snacking on fruit and cookies, but she said if I was going to get better that I needed to eat actual meals, so she began to cook for me, even when I said I didn't want anything. Even with this, we didn't eat together for the first week as she went back to her room after checking on me. But during the start of the second week of me being home, she started to sit down with me while I was awake and talk with me. She told me about her day at work and her coworkers and a bunch of other stuff. It felt like a lot of it were things she wanted to tell me earlier but couldn't because everything was still raw. But when she started to talk, she didn't stop. And honestly, I enjoyed listening to her talk about her day because it felt different. It went from talking to us watching TV together during nights that I couldn't fall asleep, to us just talking about our issues that we've been holding to ourselves for a while. It was extremely cathartic. And there was no yelling or arguing, just listening. It felt a way that we hadn't talked in a long time, not since before we got together years ago when we were friends and classmates. Sometime during the second week, I had hit a point where I felt extremely ill, and I didn't want to talk or do anything, but I couldn't sleep either because I kept on coughing. She didn't go to work that day and stayed beside me for a long while. We didn't talk at all, but she made sure I was still eating and drinking water. There's a lot that can be said on how those 2 weeks made me feel about my situation with her and everything that had happened, but I can't convey them in words, much less writing. But I'll just say it was a lot of time to think. Since I've recovered, I have been trying to make a bigger effort to talk with her, but at the same time, not trying to make it feel forced as it may have felt a month ago. Just random conversations about random things, about how her photos were going, how work was doing, if she liked her boss, just whatever. She spent less time in her room and more time in the living room with me when I had gotten home, just talking about her day and work, customers, and coworkers. In turn, I told her about my day. Gradually, within these weeks, it feels as if the transition from being in a relationship to being friends is a lot more apparent, and it feels better and more organic this way as it's become easier to communicate. Even still, though, there's a barrier between us, something that formed from our final argument. It's hard to describe exactly what it is, but it's there. The deadline that I had formed for moving out is at the end of October, as that's when my lease ends. It's been nice looking back on everything and seeing how our situation has been changing for the better. Am I the idiot for calling off my wedding after my fiancé's prank left my best friend traumatized? My fiancé attacked his BFF on his bachelor party. I don't know what to do. My fiancé Alex has a BFF, Danny, since they were 4. She's not like the usual Reddit BFF. She's a lovely, sweet person who has never crossed boundaries with Alex or their 2 other friends, Marcus and Daniel. The 4 are very close. Danny is gay and always was. She is very much a woman, but likes to dress in jeans and t-shirts and not in any feminine clothing. She is lean, tall, has short hair, and is just one of the boys in a lot of ways. This weekend was Alex's bachelor party. All 4 plus 2 other friends of Alex went along. It was to a coastal town that's well known for hosting bachelor and bachelorette parties, but there's no strip club or anything. They stayed in a B&B and had scuba diving and kayaking planned. The first night went okay, dinner at a restaurant and a nightclub, and then home. Last night was the issue. They did the nightclub and headed back to the house. Marcus and Daniel, who are both single, brought back 2 girls from the nightclub and got busy in their bedrooms. The rest were drinking in the living room, but things got a bit loud and the 2 friends started complaining that they didn't get to go to a strip club and never got to see titties and butt. They were blaming their wives and calling them names. Danny told them to shush as it was ruining the mood, and they both thought it would be funny if they saw Danny's body naked to make up for it. The thing is, Alex joined in and they stripped her. She was screaming loudly, and Marcus and Daniel came running and rescued Danny and put her in a bedroom with the girls and had a fight with the 3 men. Daniel doesn't drink due to a chronic medical condition and the medication he is on. So they packed up and took Danny and the 2 girls and left the other 3. Danny was hysterical, and Marcus wanted her to go to the police, but she wouldn't. She was afraid to go home, so they ended up dropping the girls off and taking Danny to her parents, which was an hour away. Marcus was at my door at 7 a.m. this morning, and he told me what happened, that if he ever sees Alex again, he's afraid of how things could go. He told me that if he can convince Danny to press charges, he will. Then he left. Alex returned about 3 this afternoon. He was acting normally until I told him Marcus had visited. He was very nervous and tried to play down what happened as a joke that got out of hand. I'm devastated. I heard him out, but he knew I wasn't accepting what he was saying. I told him Danny may be going to the police, and he got very panicked and pale. He said she had him blocked and he wanted to go talk to her. I told him she wasn't at her place as she was too afraid he or his buddies would turn up there. I asked him to leave, and he didn't want to go, but I insisted. He was crying, saying it was a prank that got out of hand. I heard him out only as a courtesy to our 2-year relationship, but I'm done. I don't know this man. I don't know if I should reach out to Danny or just do nothing. Marcus and I have been in constant contact, and he agrees that I have no option but to end things. And I don't know where to start with canceling everything, as the wedding was in 5 weeks. But it seems trivial compared to what Danny is going through right now. Marcus is convinced that Danny is going to the police after talking to her parents, so I think Alex is in trouble. I can't support him on this. Maybe I'm wrong, as he was drunk and probably had taken other things, but this was his friend from age 4, and he did this to her. I've not blocked Alex, but I've not replied or picked up any of his calls. Now for the 1-day update. It's been a terrible day. I can't reach out to my friends yet, as I'm ashamed. I did tell my parents and my brother, and they have been wonderful. My brother brought his friend with him when he came to stay, and today both of them packed up every bit of my ex's stuff and took it to his parents' house. X was there and just asked if that meant I was finished with him, and my brother said yes. And did he really expect any other reaction? His father intervened and told X not to say anything more. He told my brother to tell me to contact him on canceling the wedding. I'm not contacting his father ever. My parents are handling canceling the wedding, and my father got in touch with my cousin, who is a lawyer, and he is going to help and advise me as needed. I have to disentangle myself from X on leases, bank accounts, savings, and such, although my brother made me transfer all of my money from joint accounts, savings, and daily accounts to my own account. It's a mess. I tried to ring Danny, but she isn't up for speaking to anyone, so I just texted her that I was there for her and that I had broken up with Alex. She hasn't replied, and I don't expect she will. She's in a bad way, apparently. Daniel spent 3 hours with me today. There's a lot going on, but I'm afraid to say too much for fear of damaging any court case. Just to say there are 2 videos of the incident. One by Jeb, one of the 2 friends. A lot of it is chaotic, but the last part is clear and telling, apparently. The owners of the rental house apparently have gotten involved and have footage, but I can't say more. When Marcus left me, he went to both those guys' wives and told them what happened. Jeb's wife has been very helpful, apparently, and she has split from him. The other guy's wife, too, has left him. Things are going how most of you want them to go. That's all I will say. Well, I will add, it was worse than what Marcus shared. Daniel told me that before Danny found her style, she had long hair and dressed feminine and was stunningly beautiful, and all 3 of them were in love with her as teens. Alex took her rejection very personally, apparently, and Daniel says he was angry and bitter for a couple of years but hid it from her. They thought he had gotten over it, but Daniel feels this smacks of revenge against her. Scary if this is true. I have and continue to receive hundreds of texts from Alex. He told me his father told him to stop texting me, but he can't. I haven't replied or blocked based on advice. This is very hard, and I don't know what way all this is going to end up. Sorry about any mistakes and typos. I'm not doing well. If there's more, I will post again if I'm able. Now for the 4-day update. Hi all. My last update was removed, but if anyone is interested, I thought I'd post the latest and get some advice. I got a call from Danny. Daniel has been ever present, and I'm guessing it was because he knew she was going to call. There's a lot more to the story. The first night was normal, as I said, but on the Saturday, Alex, Jeb, and their friend decided not to go scuba diving with Danny, Daniel, and Marcus. Danny was feeling very hungover and gave up after an hour and went back to the Airbnb. She walked into the living room to find all 3 guys engaging in intimacy acts with 2 women. Jeb shouted at her to get out, as this was costing them a fortune. The women were escorts. She left and went back to the boat and only told Marcus what she saw. When they all went back later, Alex told her not to tell me, as it was just his last bit of freedom. She told him she was disgusted with him and that he wasn't free. She told him she would have to think about what to do. Marcus convinced her to stay another night, as he and Daniel had met the 2 girls the night before and were seeing them again that night. If Danny wanted to leave, then Daniel would have to take her, as he was her ride, and there wasn't public transport in the tiny town. So Alex cheated, as did the other two. Marcus told their wives that morning, but not me. He was going to do it in stages as he knew I was in shock. The actual attack went further than Marcus told me also. And while Alex hadn't actually done anything beyond pulling off her clothes, unlike the other two, he stood by and watched and did nothing to help her. She said she thought he had taken shrooms earlier, but couldn't be sure. Marcus and Daniel did rescue her, but things had already escalated. She went to the police immediately when she got to her parents. The Airbnb owners had also gone independently when they saw the footage. All three men are facing the consequences of their actions. Donnie told me she was sorry she didn't tell me immediately like she wanted to do. She is very distraught still. I didn't want to make things worse for her. I don't think I am needed for any legal proceedings, so I finally blocked Alex and his parents. The wedding is canceled, and I'm just starting to disentangle myself from Alex on bank accounts and such. Here's my issue. I'm feeling very angry towards Marcus. It feels like he didn't really care about me. He stopped Danny from telling me so he could continue to shack up with the girl he met. He apparently feels guilty because if they had left, Danny would not have been attacked. He didn't do me the courtesy of telling me that Alex cheated that morning like he did with the other two wives. It's not like he was sparing my feelings because my ex assaulting another woman was a pretty damn bad thing to hear. He didn't tell me the full extent of the attack. Danny is still unsure if Alex wasn't just waiting his turn or if all he was going to do was watch. I should have been told that ASAP, and not from Danny because the conversation was incredibly difficult for her. Daniel didn't know about the escorts at all and didn't know. Marcus hadn't shared the full story of what they saw when they burst in. Daniel has been my rock. I need some perspective here. Is it okay to be angry at Marcus? Is it misplaced anger? I'm pretty angry at Alex, though, and that's all I feel towards him. Can anyone give me a different perspective I'm missing? Marcus and I had been in constant contact. He's already back at work, so it was messages, texts, and occasional calls. He actually visited last night, but I didn't open the door to him. Daniel is saying whatever I feel right now is okay, but I think he's just placating me. I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't have to have any more contact with Alex and think the case will move along without me. I'm thinking of telling Daniel that I need a break from him and Marcus and that group of friends. Danny and I have said we will stay in touch, but I can't see us being very close. My best friend, who I finally confided in, thinks I should just step away from them all now for good and try to move forward. My parents agree and think it's necessary for healing. My brother thinks Daniel has been nothing but great and I shouldn't cut him off. But they all seem to be a package deal, but without Alex now, obviously. So I think it's probably all or nothing. What should I do? I don't want to be ungrateful, but a clean break feels right. Now for a new update. I've been putting off writing this update, but am back because I need even more advice and an outside perspective. The comments have been pretty helpful so far. Thank you. It's long, but I'll do my best to shorten it. First of all, Danny and I have bonded. She and I talk every day and message constantly. I didn't expect that, but it's truly wonderful. She says she needs a good straight friend right now, JK. And honestly, she is a great person and has been a huge support to me despite what she has been going through. I told her I posted here as I felt guilty as to tell my story I had to tell hers. She was okay with it. She is thinking of waiving her right to anonymity when the trial comes, as she wants everyone to know she was raped and by who. Danny has quit her job, moved to her parents full-time, and is in therapy. She's just about okay. Surviving still rather than living, but she is so strong and amazing. Justice moves slowly here, so there isn't too much of an update on the legal process. Marcus was told, however, he would not face charges for attacking the two actively attacking Danny. I went back to work and it was awful. I work for a tiny startup. Oscar, who works there, is friendly with Marcus and my brother. We are all into martial arts and attend the same dojo, so I'm getting a lot of pity. I'd have been okay with sympathy or empathy, but being pitied sucks. Still, it's better than being home all day doing nothing. Daniel gave me space as I asked, and he is truly a good guy. There is nothing romantic there at all, though. I'm not in a fit state for anything like that and won't be for a very, very long time. And he is just a good guy. No ulterior motives. We text a bit, and he is in a lot of contact with Danny. I got a letter in the mail from Alex, said he held out hope while I hadn't blocked him, but once I did, he was distraught. He told me he doesn't want to freak me out by turning up in person, and I know that wouldn't look good for him anyway. But he just wanted to tell his side of the story. He said he was pressured into doing stuff with the escorts, and he only got a BJ. The other two were really pressuring him to do more, but he didn't and says he regrets even doing that. He admits he was angry at Danny because she told him he either told me about the cheating or she would, but he knew he was totally in the wrong. He knew I would dump him for cheating, so he took everything he could get his hands on. He's not even sure what he took, and while he remembers pulling off Danny's shoes, he doesn't remember anything else. So he was just peer pressured and drunk and drugged up, and he did nothing wrong at all, basically. I was just disgusted to read this. His total lack of accountability is just sickening. I'm not responding to him ever. Any future mail goes unopened into the trash. I'm in therapy, but it's early days and I'm not seeing progress yet. I'm left with Marcus. He knows I've been angry with him and is desperate to talk it out. I probably feel too much anger towards him, but find it hard not to. He's still feeling very guilty over making Danny stay. I don't understand why I feel so angry towards him. It's not on the level of anger I feel towards Alex by any means, but I'm still hesitant to talk to him. I think he made mistakes, but in my heart, I know he was dealing with a lot that morning. I just wouldn't have been there when Alex got home if I had known the truth. I feel Marcus should have told me everything, as I was the one who had to face Alex alone. I know I should hear him out, but I'm finding it very hard. How can I get past this? I want to clear the air with him, even if we are never friends, and me cutting him out is really having a terrible effect on him. I know he rescued Danny and has been constantly checking up on her. I know he can be a good guy, but part of me feels he wasn't all good that weekend. I don't know. I haven't touched this in therapy, as we are just starting and are talking about Alex. I need advice on how to deal with this. I wanted to give it some time, but Marcus's mental health is pretty poor, and maybe by not meeting him, I am just making him worse. How can I find it in me to just bite the bullet and hear him out? Why am I so angry with him? How can I move past this? I don't want to be angry at him. I'm so exhausted from being angry at him and at Alex, and I want it to stop, at least towards Marcus, but it won't. Help. I'm visiting Danny for the weekend that should have been my wedding. We are going to have a Loaders marathon, and her mother is making a cheesecake. My own family has been wonderful in every way, but Danny is truly why I'm still standing. Am I the idiot for refusing to be my parents' designated driver after they ruined Halloween for me? I'm male 25, and 5 years ago my parents wanted to go to my sister's house for Halloween. At the time I was still living with them, and I wanted to go to a party a friend was hosting. But my parents were adamant that I go with them instead because they wanted us all to be together. I still wanted to go to my friend's party, and my parents suggested a compromise in which I go to my sister's party first, then my friend's. I figured it couldn't hurt to do both, so I agreed since I liked helping my nephews with trick-or-treating. And that year, I was wearing an inflatable ninja costume I was really eager to have fun in. Well, I was ready and waiting in the costume for hours. By the time we finally took the kids out, most houses stopped giving candy and there was hardly anybody walking around. And we only went around the block. That's it. Then when I wanted to go to my friend's house, my parents guilted me into staying because they needed me as a designated driver. I would have driven them home first and then gone to my friend's party. But my parents just kept drinking and refused to leave. So I lost out on going to the other party and cussed my parents out for making me miss it and not even being able to enjoy my Halloween. They just said that it was too late, and what could they do about it? They didn't even attempt to make it up to me. I refused to speak with them later. So they confronted me and I said I didn't even want to look at them because they broke their promise. Then I said that unless they could somehow pull a new Halloween party with all my friends out of their asses, then they had completely screwed me over. Then I left before they could say anything else to me. My friends were nearly as upset as I was, but my sister told me off and said I was callous because she had wanted me there. Ever since that year, I only spent Halloween with friends. This year, my parents begged me to go with them to my sister's instead. I asked why, and they wanted me to drive them. So I refused and said they just wanted a designated driver, and they'd already screwed me over before and didn't even attempt to make it better back then. And I didn't want to just sit around watching them get drunk, with the only real highlight being helping kids trick or treat. I hung out with my friends, and we had a blast with a farmyard party. But my sister called me up on Monday, furious at me because our parents were pulled over on their way home and got a DUI, and that this would have never happened if I had driven them. And now most of the family is pissed at me. So am I the jerk for refusing to drive my parents to my sister's house for Halloween because of something they did 5 years ago? Now for a few important comments. One commenter said, while you are 100% not the idiot for anything your parents did, you are weirdly bitter about a party you missed as a 19-year-old dude. You were an adult. You chose to stay. Nothing was stopping you from leaving. You need to recognize that you are responsible for your own choices, something your family doesn't seem to be good at. I replied, no, I was stopped from leaving because I couldn't take my parents' vehicle. We rode together, and they refused to let me just borrow their car and come back. The bitterness is because they lied to me and then showed no remorse that they did. Another commenter asked, this is weird. Have they just done it on these 2 Halloween parties, or do they do this at other times? Why didn't your sister drive them? Or sister's partner if they're in the picture? If she has kids, there surely had to be a sober adult there. Obviously, it's not your fault your parents drove drunk. Not the idiot. I responded, they've driven drunk several times. I didn't mind driving them some places, but then they wanted me as a designated driver all the time. And they only wanted me to drive their car, not mine. So I made it clear to them that I wouldn't be their driver if I had plans, which I did. Now for the 5-day update. My sister and her husband spotted my post a few days after I made it and called me. My sister said she's ashamed of herself and now sees my point of view. At first, she was furious I made the post, but her husband chewed her out for not ever sticking up for me because he really had no idea my parents treated me this badly. And after they both read the comments, she realized how toxic this whole dynamic was. At first, she blamed it on the stress of being a mother, but quickly took that back and said she really has no excuse for never considering me in these situations. We talked, and she remarked how I've always loved Halloween ever since I was a little kid, and she let my parents ruin it for me that day 5 years ago, even though she knew about the promise they broke. The conversation got pretty emotional, and she apologized heavily because she had put the blame on me when she was the one who let our parents drink and drive year after year. I've got more details now. And my mother is actually the one who got the DUI. I'd assumed our father, but he apparently was so wasted that he was on the verge of passing out, and pretty much did as soon as he was in the car. Our mother insisted that she was okay to drive, and then ran a red light. That's how a cop spotted her, and she was arrested. The car was impounded, and our father was escorted home by police to sleep it off. He woke up with a raging hangover and a temper to match, then took it all out on my sister over the phone, and she in turn took it out on me. Our mother has had her license suspended. The car cost them $600 to get out of impound, and both of my parents were putting this on me, until we all ganged up on them for what they've been doing. Our father fought us every step of the way, but we made it clear they've been putting their alcoholism above everything else, and we're tired of it because there have been a lot of broken promises from them all around. Our mother promised to do better, but our father just stayed silent and wouldn't make eye contact with any of us. Things are tense now, but I'm glad my sister is finally on my side in all of this.